Hello and welcome to Superhero Hub. I'm Sam,
I'm Matt.
and today we're going to be reviewing,
Legends of Tomorrow.
DC Legends. This episode is called Moonshot, and if you can remember last episode, you had the ending Commander Steel, or whatever his name is, Haywood, was training for NASA or whatever, doing his thing. I mean, I thought he was going to be an astronaut, but apparently not. So yeah, and he was like with Eobard Thawne. So that kind of set up this episode. You kind of had Rip Hunter drop off Commander Steel in New York, and then the Legends kind of appear and look for him. They can't find him, so they're on the computer doing their thing, and then they kind of find out is at NASA, part of the Apollo 13 mission. So they kind of go there. Rip gets a smack in the face. That was a good moment. You know, a good bit of smacking, because really there wasn't really much fighting in it. But for some reason, while I was watching it, I was thinking this show's really self-aware, but I can't remember why. But I think it's real interesting. You kind of saw a new
I mean, they
dynamic.
they 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 were self-aware kind of in its dealings with Rip Hunter and his place on the team,
Yeah, and they
and
kind of discussed it. I think that was kind of what I was thinking about. Yeah, they know that obviously, because what we were discussing last time with the two captains, how's the dynamic going to be? And I think it was interesting that they kind of brought up there were issues, there was conflict between them two. Then they kind of like admitted there was a problem, and then they obviously sat down and discussed it and kind of resolved it, as opposed to like having it up in the air for like.
yeah, I'm not too sure about the way they've resolved it though. It feels kind of like Spock has been made captain, but Kirk is still ambling around on the Enterprise, just doing nothing. It feels odd.
um well, if you look at it like that, you'd think that, I mean, they did kind of disambiguously kind of show that, like, yeah, Sarah knows how to fly the spaceship and she knows how to do Gideon and stuff like that, but like Rip Hunter knows about time travel and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, Sarah knows the interim things like Gideon do this and do that, but I think he still has like a lot of specialist knowledge that they can kind of use. So I think whether they kind of cop out and do a thing where like literally, like with Spock in the first Star Trek film, where like she's like incapable, or emotionally kind of compromised, or it comes to the point where she's literally inexperienced, and then Rip Hunter has to take control.
See, I come down the other side. I think they've firmly defined that she's the captain in this episode, and he's taking the back seat, which is, I just don't think it suits the character. I think they were better off just getting him off the ship and either kill him or keep him evil, because it just feels weird now that he's just kind of going to sit there. And they even kind of touched on this episode. There was a point towards the end that something was going on the ship, and Rip's like, okay, I'll get up and I'll deal with it. But like Sarah's like, I'm the captain and I'll deal with it. It's like, you can't even do that. At that point, she was sat in the captain's chair doing her thing. She was clearly the captain. Why can't you have him get up and do something? He
Yeah,
just seemed useless throughout the entire episode.
yeah, and the point, yeah, and the he does have uses though. He does has kind of specialist things he can do, but they've kind of been breaking his balls, I guess. I mean, with that kind of thought process, if I was to say two ships, two teams, how would that make you feel?
Too busy.
Okay. So yeah, they kind of find Commander Steel is working on the NASA thing, Apollo 13, very kind of space-based, moon-based, and they kind of figure out that the part of the spear is on the moon. So the the Apollo 13 mission, which obviously the famous one, is that the one where they kind of slingshot round the moon?
Oh,
And kind of, I think that's the one where it kind of gets round the dark side of the moon. There's a
is
like,
that the is that like the Tom Hanks movie?
I guess so.
I think
It's
it
like
is.
because they say like when they kind of bump into like Commander Steel, they're like, oh yeah, there's obviously a problem with the ship because the oxygen tank blew up, and it was like, what? And I think that's when they were like, oh, history has been changed. So I think, like, in history, the oxygen tank blows up, there's no way they can get back, so they slingshot themselves back to Earth, and it's like all happy days, which is kind of like, instead of them doing that, instead of Apollo 13 doing that, that's kind of how the Wave Rider did it, you know what I mean? So they kind of swap places for there. But yeah, it's kind of self-aware how like actually like history has been changed. So you had Apollo 13 go to the moon because obviously the Spear of Destiny is there. One of the astronauts turned out to be good old Eobard. It's good because we kind of saw a new dynamic to him. See, I've kind of always been on the thing that he's a good character, but like is really kind of underused because he's kind of physical as opposed to is because I mean, yeah, he's a scientist and he's got a great mind and stuff like that, but really generally in the Flash all he does is go around and like fight the Flash. You never actually get a moment where he sits down and you actually see his kind of character and personality,
especially with that actor. It's a difficult one because a lot of people, myself included, got used to your man who plays Harrison Wells being Eobard Thawne. Yeah, Tom Cavanagh was Eobard Thawne, and this dude. And you know, people tend to forget that because the Flash kind of confused it in the show itself, and they kept on calling him Wells in late season 1 and in season 2, even though he never was. And we haven't really spent much time really with this guy as Thawne. He's popped in for an episode and then he's disappeared. So it was nice to slow down and get some time with him.
Yeah, because obviously they send Ray Palmer over to, because obviously they're all zipping around, stuff like that, they're in space, and they're like, aye, something's wrong with the capsule. They send Ray in, like the two people have been knocked out, and Thawne's like trying to get himself to the moon to get the spear, and obviously him and Ray end up fighting. There's a bit of a knife fight. Subplot, like, they kind of revisited what they did last episode with Vixen kind of being integral to the timeline and stuff like that, and how you shouldn't change the timeline. You had Nate crying over the fact he didn't have a relationship with his dad and trying to fix all that rubbish. I like him more of a doer as a speaker. You know what I mean? I don't like the idea of him being the focus of like a subplot or anything out, which is kind of turned into, because you kind of got the kind of Vixen and him, Citizen Steel, are kind of Hawkman and Hawkgirl from last season. They're kind of involved with each other, and it's kind of being a bit more focused, because over the last 4 episodes their kind of relationship, from them like in the George Washington episode to them in the Land of the Lost episode, in this episode it's like they're kind of, them being the focus doesn't do it for me. It's like I don't care about them. They've established that they can't be together and they've got different kind of paths in history. Have that, like, yeah, they know about that, then forget about it. They don't need to be the focus. I think because they would I would have rather had more time focusing with like anyone else but them.
I'm not loving it either. What I will say is you're right about them being like Hawkman and Hawkgirl, but they do have more personality than those two.
Yeah, they're not as bad, but like, yeah, it's like there's no way they need to be like, their relationship needs to, I mean, they've already established nothing can happen between them. Forget about it. You know, just have that, great. You know, that kind of self-aware, nothing can happen. Forget about it. But the fact they're dragging it out, it's like, that's not hot to me. That's really not doing it.
Yeah, but I guess they needed that anchor there because they still needed something to keep Citizen Steel and his granddad and that whole dynamic with his dad and whatnot to drag it out, and they needed to get the plot with her to the point of what's happened to my home. They've kind of I think they've written themselves into a corner. I think they have to do it. Yeah. And
get rid of her and fix him, because it was good at the start, because I was saying how he kind of gel with the team is good. I like his relationship with Ray Palmer. I like the kind of camaraderie between them, but when you kind of take him out of that and put him with the girl, it kind of all falls apart. It's like the relationships on that program, the friendships are great, the team thing is great, but then when it starts to get into the relationships, there's nothing
Yeah.
they can do. They're like traveling through time. They've got a job to do. They're meeting people who have predetermined destinies. Nothing can ever happen. So the fact of putting people in relationships where you know it's never going to work out, that ain't hot. Who wants to see that every
Right.
single
And
season?
it's like the same thing, and not to keep on harping on the Star Trek thing, but it's the same thing with Star Trek, isn't it? It's like you could never really build a sustaining relationship because they're always going to be in a different place and a different time.
Exactly.
And I think they will probably get to a point where one of them's going to lead the ship. I imagine it'll probably be, what's her name, Amaya.
Yeah, something like that. I just called her Vixen.
Yeah, probably
Yeah,
gonna.
she'll definitely leave. But yeah, it's like the friendship dynamic is great, and the fact that with all the other shows like Arrow and Flash, they get bogged down with with kind of relationships. It's great that the plus point of this show is that they don't really need that, and the friendship and kind of teamwork and stuff like that, and the character development of being on the ship close together and stuff like that is works perfectly. That, you know, there's great kind of chemistry and stuff like that between the people, and then it's kind of a knife in the back when they put like the worst part of last season was the flipping Hawkman and Hawk Girl rubbish, and the worst part of this season getting there has got to be them two as well. It's like they know nothing can happen, so stop pushing it. You know, the friendships, the strength of that, and the fact that characters can still develop over their experience makes this show solid, makes it completely different to the other two, and makes it great so you don't get bogged down with that pointless stuff. And the fact for some reason they keep trying to do it and failing miserably bothers
It's
me.
the CW, isn't it? They need that kind of relationship drama. It is what it is. It's the network they're on. It's I think there was.
It's annoying because this could be the perfect show. This could literally be the perfect show. Great, solid, like they've got something there that really most other shows don't have. It's very rare that kind of a cast of like 7 or 8 people can have such great chemistry at the same time and pull it off perfectly, is what most shows don't really have. And the fact they've got it and they seem hell bent on trying to ruin it makes me scratch my head. I don't
They've
get
either
it.
got to give up the ghost or try and find a way of making it work, because you don't really have much relationship drama on Doctor Who, but Amy and Rory worked. If you can get something like that going,
But
maybe.
that's a human element though. If there was like, if every other member of the Legend was an alien and then you had them two humans, yeah, you'd get it. But the fact that pretty much everyone's the same, trying to differentiate just because they're trying to be in a relationship, that is stupid. If I could describe it in one word. So yeah, I mean, getting on to kind of chemistry and stuff like that, you kind of had. I mean, I don't really want to talk about Amaya and like Nate and the kind of thing. Yeah, it was a bit of the episode, but it was like pointless. It's just going round in circles. So forget about that. Probably the greatest kind of part of the episode was like you had Ray and Eobard Thawne working together. I think that was great. I mean, you get to actually see a dynamic to Eobard Thawne as opposed to him running and slapping people. You sat down, and it's probably the most human has been. You know, he's talking about how he kind of misses the dynamic of working with Cisco and Caitlin and the people at Star Labs. He missed that, which I mean is a good callback to the Flash, because most people are probably like kind of forgotten about that stuff. It's kind of the Flash has moved on from that, but you got to kind of remember that this guy was masquerading as Harrison Wells for like a good year and a half. So I mean,
Exactly,
yeah,
and that's kind of what I mean. Even if they haven't forgotten it, the Flash kind of hedges its bets and sometimes says he was Wells. He wasn't. He was Eobard Thawne, and he clearly, on that show, he clearly did like Cisco, even though he killed him in the end. So there is something to bring back in. I think Ray's probably the right person to have the conversation with. He is the dopey guy who will probably trust him.
he's kind of very hopeful. You know what I mean? Very kind of empathic and stuff like that, which is kind of a good thing that they are kind of scientists. They're both smart. They're kind of in the same field. Ray's understanding, even if things are like, even if the balance is way off. So I think he was a good person to talk to. I mean, even then, even like the chemistry between them two worked fine. You know what I mean? Even though Eobard Thawne's kind of had a back seat and stuff like that, but I mean, chemistry is what this show makes this show great. That you can put any two people together, and it's like defining, you know what I mean? You had Eobard explaining, like, Ray was like, "Yo, you killed Barry's mum," and it's like, "Yeah, but it's like I'm not really a bad guy. Yeah, I killed her and stuff like that." But it's like if you go through history and you travel through time and you see like certain people and stuff like that, they're real monsters. I mean, that was like a callback to people like Hitler and stuff like that, and like Saddam Hussein, and like, because I mean, when it comes to like labeling people monsters and stuff like that, the term can be kind of overused. Yeah, he's a bad guy, we'll admit that, but there are people who have done a million times worse and stuff like that who are labelled exactly the same. It's like,
right, that's where do you draw the line in this universe? You know, your big hero, your big linchpin, Oliver Queen, kills people.
yeah, what's the kind of difference with him? His kind of is orphaned people. He's killed fathers. He's killed mothers and stuff like that. It's like, what makes him different from this guy? You know what I mean? I mean, if you label in the same people, one guy who's killed one person and one person who's like committed genocide and killed millions of people, you know, can you really like label? Yeah, you can label a murderer, but I mean, you can't really put them in the same category if one person's killed one person and the other person's killed like hundreds of millions. There's kind of a lot of differentiation. So yeah, I think I like that he kept his word, because it could be so easy for like the villain to like be like, oh yeah, you know, we'll keep an alliance, and then when we get back on Earth, we'll get back to it. You know what I mean? But it'd be so easy for like Eobard to like backstab him and just do that kind of overplayed stuff where you think that's kind of annoying. I think it worked a hell of a lot better, the fact that he kind of didn't betray him and stuff like that, because it's kind of, even though there's kind of no hope there and stuff like that, it's kind of an honourable guy, you know what I mean? Yeah, you get like people who do bad things and who would just like, you know, Damien Dark wouldn't do that, Malcolm Merlin wouldn't do that.
It's my biggest pet peeve is the mustache twirling villain who does villainous things just to be villainous when it makes no sense.
It's so easy for them to have kind of done that, but the fact they didn't work better, because as I said, if he was there with Malcolm Merlin, you know, Malcolm Merlin would have screwed him over like within like 5 minutes. So it's kind of I don't really know how to describe it, but I think it made me, I mean, I like Eobard Thawne anyway. I think he's a good character anyway, even though he is kind of underused, but it made me like him a hell of a lot more because of that. And I think that,
and I think it makes sense. You know, it's something as well that's frustrated me is in these kind of shows or even in films when you see the villain who's like, oh well, we'll die together then. It's like, hang on, that makes no sense. Why would you want that?
Exactly.
You know, why don't you save yourself and then kill them later? That makes more sense. That makes sense to me about his character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even when they've gone through everything, and like again, Ray Palmer is like set it to 38 degrees and stuff like that, and it's like everyone else is kind of taking roll call, like, do we trust him? And like Ray Palmer was like, yeah, you know, get it done. Which I mean, from that position, you know, it's fair enough to do. If he screwed him over, they would have been all kind of. If he screwed him over back on the ship, then Ray Palmer would have been like, nah, don't trust him. But I mean, he kind of saved him really, and it was good when he kind of got on the ship, and even like the real slight interaction with Rip Hunter, because I mean, you go back to the season finale of The Flash, when like Eobard was saying he kind of had interaction with Rip Hunter before because of a little space orb ship that he uses to go back in time.
Right, and because, you know, they know that, I think they know, don't they? Because Ray brought up in this episode that Eobard Thawne's on the run from the Wraith thing.
Yeah.
If you know he's on the run from that, then clearly he's a man who's desperate to live, so he's not going to sabotage himself, is he?
Yeah, it's good as well, because he said like the Spear of Destiny, and it's like, yeah, I want it for kind of one kind of really like mundane reason, and it was like to live, you know what I mean? So yeah, even when like he escaped the It's interesting because this was like really with everything else happening in the episode. This was only like maybe a quarter of the episode, but it was still so kind of magnanimous. It was defining. Like he walks out of I mean the whole thing, not just this bit, but I mean this is another bit. He comes out the cell, and like Ray's got the gun and is like, it's interesting those kind of anti-speed weapons that Rip's got. It's like I was the one who invented them. See, that was cool as well because that's like bringing up like you might not know much about this guy from what is kind of been shown in the show, but the stuff that's been hinted at and stuff like that, it's like this guy's kind of had a massive dynamic with like other characters that you probably ain't seen yet. It's like there's a lot of kind of stuff going on between him and Rip Hunter that has kind of been hinted at as well. It's like obviously whether they've worked together in the future or something like that, or come across each other in a non kind of like adversarial way. You know, maybe like it, like on the first meetings and stuff like that before Eobard turned and like had this thing with the Flash, they probably worked together. They were probably like friends and stuff like that. But obviously the fact that he killed Barry's mum and it's kind of very personal to the kind of everyone else around him, you know, it's kind of easy to kind of write this guy off. But really you got to think, before he kind of went crazy as it was, this guy probably had a fair amount of interaction, and his travel through time as well is kind of come up against like a lot of people.
I imagined this TV version was probably a lot like Cisco in his future, who just happened to figure out a way of getting speed.
Yeah. So you got to imagine that he's kind of been a lot of places and has had a lot of relationships with people that hasn't really been kind of negative and stuff like that. It's just the fact that, you know, the people he's interacting with now, because as an after effect of him killing Barry's mum, is kind of always going to be reviewed in a negative way. But really his motivations, I mean, originally it's kind of like, yeah, he's got the speed, he's ran about a bit and he's got stuck, and really like the first season of The Flash, this guy wanted to get home. Nothing more than that, you know what I mean? The guy's lost, he's out of his time. He's dumb reasons to run back and he shouldn't have really put himself in that position, but really all he wanted to do is get home. And then this, all he wants to do is like not die, you know what I mean? So it's all kind of comes from the same thing. Like the only reason he's kind of in trouble is because he got stuck in the first place. If he went home he wouldn't be in this mess.
Right, but you still should never forget, he is the bad guy, he is the villain.
Yeah.
And he will kill all of them if he gets a chance, so they should never be too trusting of him.
Yeah, but it's kind of good that like there's like a big kind of side to him and dynamic to him that hasn't really been explored to this point. I think that's what makes him a great villain as well.
Right, he is more interesting than Damien Darhk,
because
Mr. I'll conquer the world for no real reason at all.
Yeah, because like in the comic books, like you like all kind of through the thing, even like the biggest villains and that have ended up teaming up with heroes at some point. You had Venom working with Spider-Man against Carnage. You've had Magneto working with like the X-Men a hell of a lot of times, you know what I mean? So
Magneto is an X-Men at the minute.
Yeah, so I mean that's the kind of example I'm using, but a lot of like big time villains and heroes have kind of had a kind of shaky like alliance thing to face like a bigger problem and stuff like that, and I think really this is kind of one of the few times where that's kind of been explored and worked out.
Yeah, albeit briefly for an episode. I like the stuff with Ray on the moon. Didn't a song kick in, or am I making it up?
That was when like they needed a distraction because the feed was about to kick in, and then like Martin Stein started singing like a moron, and then like in the credits they kind of had the credits like half down there and they played it again. I was like, I weren't really too hot on that the first time, whether they thought it was really funny. Like, I
thought it was going to be, you know, in the credits I thought it was going to be like a blooper or something, like you'd mess it up, but it wasn't. They're just playing it again.
It's just like, yo, whatever. Yeah, it was kind of weird, but it weren't nothing I wanted to see again.
I thought it was pretty funny. I kind of liked it.
There was like a kind of a bit earlier on in the episode that was even funnier. Like they're pretending to like work for NASA and stuff, and they're like, "What about your friend over there?" And it's like Mick Rory like pilfering a cigar and putting it in his pocket with his glasses like hanging off. I thought that was a great bit. You know what I mean? It's good because really kind of when Mick Rory kind of does funny stuff, I kind of like that stuff, and it's kind of showing that like yeah, he's a good guy, but like at the bottom of it, he is kind of like a thief. So it's like jacking the cigar, put it in his pocket. Like I thought that was real funny. That was
Is
probably
your man that plays Jazz? Is he actually English? Because that accent was way too good.
I don't think so. No, it's good for him, I guess. But an English accent's kind of easy to do. The problem is when
Well,
when Americans do it, they overcook it.
I thought it was pretty. I mean, it was super posh, but it seemed a bit too good. I think he. I don't know. I haven't googled it.
I don't know, but I mean, really, like the problem is when Americans kind of do an accent and stuff like that, the English accent, the majority of the times it's to be like doofy. It's like they do it in like a mocking sense, but it's like if they actually like pulled it together and did it seriously, it like works out fine. So I think it's one of them ones. Obviously,
Robert Downey Jr. did it right, didn't he, in the film? So it's
so if they actually take the time to actually do it properly, it's fine. But most people are just like, oh, British, oh, hello, cup of tea, and they always do it like real mocking, and it's
you
forget
just think
that.
Chinese for some reason.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, most of the times they just do it for shtick, like laughing at the British people. It's like, yo, it's like.
Oh, that's all right.
It's probably funny amongst Americans, but like it's kind of doofy. It's like, yo,
yeah, but, I
why don't
mean,
you just
all
do,
countries do that, don't they?
yeah, why don't you just like do it seriously and just say like dumb stuff? Don't like ham the accent and think you're like so funny. It's like that ain't art. So anyway, I think we've covered everything. Let's talk numbers.
I'll go with an 8. I thought it was a fun episode.
I thought it was a real good episode, real strong. It's been the strongest out of the last 3 episodes, easy.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's why they started on the other one. But yeah, I thought it was fun. I still have concerns in the long term about how they're going to fit Rip into the show again. I don't quite know how that's going to work. I think they need to hurry up, like you were saying, this thing with Nate and Maya. But for the most part, I thought it was good.
Yeah, yeah, negative things, obviously their thing, but hopefully they kind of, get out of that kind of thing. I think the last few episodes are going to be strong. There's only like a couple left, I think, only about 3 or 4 left. So this is a kind of race to the finish line now. Let's see what's going on. Let's have Damien Dark, Malcolm Merlin back, Legion of Doom stuff, 1-on-1. Let's get it done. So that's what I'm looking for in the future. Last season finished strong. I'm interested to see where they're going to go next season, and that's about it. So yeah.
You haven't given it a number yet.
Oh, I'll give it an 8 as well.
Oh.
Yeah. I got carried away there. So yeah, that's our review of the episode. Looking forward to next week. Not really a cliffhanger, so we'll see where it's going, whether they've got all the bits of the spear or whatever. I'm Sam.
I'm Matt.
And this has been the Superhero Hub.